So, hello and welcome again, dear friends. In our journey of quest to understand the various perspectives of mutation, today I would like to discuss the mechanisms of induced mutation. As I have been doing in every lecture, trying to give you a different perspective of mutation in the very first slide, today I would like to define mutation as an inherited change in the genetic material of an organism, and the mutational types which are there, they are based upon the class of origin, or the cell type, or the expression. So major types of mutation whatever we have seen till date, apart from that they can be spontaneous or induced. Today I am going to discuss various types of induced mutation on the basis of the cell type, that is whether that is a prokaryotic cell or a eukaryotic cell. In a eukaryotic cell, whether that is a reproductive cell or a non-reproductive cell, whether that is based upon the expression, that is protein synthesis, whether it is under a restricted condition such as a controlled condition of temperature, pH, etc., or it is expressed under controlled conditions, uncontrolled conditions and controlled conditions. We have various types of mutations in the cell's DNA, I mean to say. So if the mutation is spontaneous, we say it occurs in the absence of a known mutagen, or it is devoid of any induction. If it is induced, as we are going to see today, it occurs in the presence of a known mutagen. If the cell type is somatic, then it occurs in non-reproductive cells. If the cell type is a germline cell, then it occurs in reproductive cells. If it is a conditional mutation, that is on the basis of expression of protein, then it is expressed only under certain restricted conditions of, let us say, controlled temperature. If it is an unconditional type of mutation, then it is expressed under highly regulated conditions as well as restricted conditions. So we have mutagens versus teratogens, we have germline versus the somatic mutations, we have spontaneous mutations versus induced mutations. Today the main type of mutation which I am going to discuss is the induced mutation, and in this I would like to categorize it into various mutations which are induced by mutagens. Any compound, a physical, chemical or a biological compound which is responsible for inducing a mutation is called as a mutagen. So you see, mutagen, it can be classified basically into three. Here I am going to discuss two: physical mutagenic agents and chemical mutagenic agents. Third is the biological entity. Somewhere I will just refer it, but it is all about viruses and the genetic combination which is derived from an extra chromosomal entity. That is extra chromosomal DNA being acquired and then crossing over resulting into a mutation can also be a mutagen, biological mutagen. But that is totally a different area of study, so I will be avoiding much talk on that, because the main point of discussion, the area of focus for you is types of physical and chemical mutagenic agents. So when it comes to physical mutagenic agents, ionizing radiations are there, non-ionizing radiations are there, in which we will be majorly dealing with UV rays. The reason for that is the cells, bacterial cells as well as the eukaryotic cells, right from the day of their birth or growth on this earth, they have been very determinantal in creating the ozone layer. When the earth was a hot ball of fire, then gradually got converted into a cool chemical sea. Earth had a chemical sea. Huge inorganic chemicals were there in the form of oceans. The microorganisms or the primitive bacteria, they converted these chemicals into oxygen. That is, redox reactions were at great quantity for over the millennia. They created a ozone layer. Then the UV rays stopped coming, but till that time all the bacteria which survived on this earth, they had to encounter ultraviolet light. Therefore they have the mechanism of repair. So the answer for damage by UV and repair in the presence of visible light is attributed to evolution. So it has a great significance. That is, the physical mutagenic agent in the form of UV rays has great significance, which we will be dealing how it happens. Then ionizing radiations, particulate radiations like alpha rays, non-particulate radiations like X-rays, gamma rays, ion beams, etc. Means we are talking about the penetrative power of the ionizing radiations. So the more penetrative they are, the more hazardous they will be. Similarly, the second category is chemical mutagenic agents. We have seen the various types of mutations. All these types will be exercised or will come into play when the cell gets exposed to such physical or chemical mutagenic agents. So alkylation is a process which results into depurination. We have already seen what is depurination. So alkylating agents like mustard gas, ethyl methyl sulfonate, methyl methyl sulfonate, etc. Base analogous compounds like 5-bromouracil. There can be many base analogous compounds, but for you to understand, one is sufficient, and the most popular one used in the studies and which is very popular among geneticists, that is a potent mutagenic agent 5-bromouracil. I will be taking the example. And lastly, acridin dyes, the acridin orange and proflavin, they have a unique capacity because they themselves are three ringed structures. And adenine and a guanine, cytosine and thymine, that is purines and pyrimidines, have a Watson and Crick alternate pairing, that is A pairs with T and G pairs with C. One is double ringed, one is single ring. So always you have a three ringed AT or a GC structure, and when such three ring structure they substitute in the replicating DNA, very interesting phenomenon occurs which we call it as mutation. So this is the basic flow sheet of what we are going to discuss today. So there are three types of mutagenic agents: physical, chemical and biological. As I said, biological mutagenic agent, these are viruses, then these can be viruses or those pathogenic bacteria which when infect a certain person or a body or an animal or a tree, let us say, they incorporate their DNA and they cause mutations. So this is one area which is not there for our discussion, but mind you, it is a very interesting area. Those who are having interest in this can study it separately. Today I will be discussing about physical and chemical mutagenic agents. So radiations from sunlight, from various radiation sources on this earth, we are constantly exposed to radiations. It involves the cellular radiations also, the 3G, 4G, 5G now we are having. All this, they have a marked effect on the cellular system. As I am again saying, even though if you are studying microbial mutations here, the purpose of studying microbial mutations is to understand the higher level impact on the multicellular system. And definitely whatever when I say with a multicellular system, that is bound to happen with the bacteria also. So same with the chemicals, carcinogens, so cigarettes, processed foods and preservatives, these are having huge impact on the cell's DNA, mind you. Junk food, therefore it's the terminology itself is very loud and clear, junk food, and it involves a great amount of carcinogenic compounds, and most of the carcinogenic compounds, they are cancer causing compounds. I don't mean here to say that each and every mutagen is a carcinogen, but definitely all carcinogens, they are mutagenic agents. So that has to be cosmetic and cleaning products which we are exposed, and this is chemicals, all the chemicals we don't know what it contains, and majorly the cosmetic and most of the cleaning disinfecting products, they do have, if it is not regulated by proper authority, they are bound to cause damage to the DNA. So these three types we will be discussing in detail. So the first is physical mutagenic agents. Physical mutagenic agents include electromagnetic radiations such as gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet light, particle radiations such as fast and thermal neutrons, alpha and beta particles, etc. So even in the nature, the cosmos, it is constantly radiating energy, it is constantly radiating radiations, and that has an impact on our life system. Once upon a time when there was no ozone on this earth, and when microorganisms were the only survivors who were constantly metabolizing whatever available in the form of chemicals, organic and inorganic, and constantly converting it into oxygen, which resulted into the ozone layer. In those times, imagine those who could survive the high dose of radiations were the only cells which survived, and they today are so primitive that they exhibit a repair capacity or repair mechanisms, which definitely will be the next lecture for discussion. DNA repair, after damage repair. So physical mutagenic agents we will see one by one. Radiations as mutagenic agents, they have a great impact and create damage to the proteins, lipoproteins, DNA, carbohydrates, etc. And directly the ionizing power of the radiation, it excites the molecules. The electron states are changed from lower level to higher excited level they go, and through highly reactive free radicals are formed. Even radiolysis of free water, because all these are present in a solution, in a solvent, in the cytoplasm, and their radiolysis of cellular water also takes place, and this results into damage to the cell's storage of genetic information, that is the DNA. And as DNA stores genetic information, the damage to the DNA also becomes very great. It assumes a great dimension, impacts the phenotype and the genotype of the cell. So when similarly, when bacteria are exposed to radiation, they gradually lose their ability to form colonies and they die off. So radiations, they have a great potential to act as mutagenic agents. They are most important among all physical mutagenic agents. Radiations which damage the DNA, they fall in the wavelength below 340 degrees nanometer. As the nanometer increases, their absorbing or their power decreases. They assume the form of waves and crests. So as the wavelength decreases, their energy increases. As the wavelength, as you can see, this is a wave. As the wavelength goes on decreasing, here it decreases, you have more energy in that radiation. As the wavelength is greater, broad wavelengths, then they are not that hazardous. They can be used for other applications like radio waves, microwaves, infrared radiation of the remote. They are not that hazardous. But as the wavelength goes on decreasing, up to visible light, it's okay. Not tube light or LED light is in the visible range. The wavelength is broad. As the wavelength goes on decreasing, when it comes to 200 nanometers, 100 nanometers, to below 100 nanometers, that is ultraviolet light, x-rays, gamma rays, their penetrating power becomes more. A LED light or a tube light will not penetrate from here and pass through the hand here. Ultraviolet light on the hand, as the wavelength increases, will be absorbed. It will not come from here. You still decrease the wavelength, the x-ray will pass from here and it will come from here. That is the difference between a broad wavelength and a narrow wavelength of electromagnetic spectrum. So as the radiation, they assume a shorter wavelength, that is below 340 nanometer, and a photon energy above 1 electrovolt, that is 1 minus eV, it becomes dangerous. The destructive nature comes into play. The destructive radiation, they consist of ultraviolet light, X-rays, gamma rays, alpha rays, beta rays, cosmic rays, neutrons, etc. Radiation induced damage which is there, they can be broadly categorized into three types. Lethal damage, where the killing of the microorganisms takes place. Potentially lethal damage, where which is lethal but only under certain conditions. It can survive. The third is sublethal type of damage, where the cells do not die but the radiation, it is there up to a certain level above which it can kill. So there is a threshold value in the sublethal type of damage. If it is crossed, then the cell will be damaged, otherwise it will not be damaged. So you can see that all the effect of these radiations are at the molecular level. So we will see one by one few examples of radiation. The first is ultraviolet light as a mutagenic agent. So this UV light, X-rays or gamma rays, whatever the radiations you can take here, even if I am showing X-rays and gamma rays, X-rays and gamma rays will induce single-stranded break or double-stranded breaks. So this is ionizing radiation, what it happens. It is completely different when it comes to ultraviolet light. It is a non-ionizing radiation and it is absorbed by the DNA. If you see UV radiation, it causes damage in the DNA of the bacteria and phages. The UV rays, they are absorbed by the nucleic acids. Now there are two ultraviolet nanometer range, that is 260 and 280. This is very narrow, actually very subtle difference is there, but still the macromolecules, they are so specific that 260 will be absorbed by DNA and 280 will be absorbed by proteins. It will not have a marked effect on the protein, though it may cause some damage, but not that extent as it causes to the DNA at 260 nanometers. So at 260, nucleic acids at 260 and proteins at 280. So here even if you are having this, change it, the nucleic acids at 260 and proteins at 280. Some typographic error while preparing the slide, so I apologize for that, but listen carefully. The UV rays are absorbed by nucleic acids at 260 nanometers and proteins at 280 nanometers, causing excitation in the macromolecules. So this 260 nanometer which is absorbed by DNA, it creates a dimer of the adjacent thymine and thymine molecules. Now this adjacent thymine and thymine, you see the double stranded DNA, two thymine molecules on the same strand. Thymine thymine means 280 pairings. 80 pairings on the same strand, you have thymine thymine. This thymine thymine, they have two adjacent sugar molecules. These sugar molecules will be joined and a cyclobutyl ring is formed. This cyclobutyl ring is responsible for formation of a structure which is usually called as a kink or a dimer. You can also call it as a distorted DNA. A distorted DNA is a speed breaker for the incoming DNA polymerase enzyme. Replication will stop there, and if replication stops, there will be no cell growth. Binary fission is stopped. So DNA molecule is targeted by the ultraviolet light at 260 nanometers and not the proteins, because proteins they absorb at 280, not much damage takes place, but DNA they have the capacity to absorb at 260, and the absorption spectrum of the DNA, if you measure it in a spectrophotometer, you will find that the maximum absorption spectra is 260 nanometers. Similarly, it is with RNA. RNA have the same absorption spectrum as that of DNA. They also absorb at 260 in and around 260 nanometers. So this excited DNA, it leads to a cross-linking of the sugar molecules. Single-stranded breaks can be there, but mostly the damage is due to the cross-linking of two thymines by cyclobutyl ring. The resultant structures are called as dimers or kinks. That is due to a cyclobutyl ring. You can see this red ring here which is formed with the two sugars of the adjacent thymines. It forms a covalent bond, and that covalent bond is called a cyclobutyl ring. So a distorted DNA or a kink in the DNA which acts as a hurdle, a speed breaker for the fastly moving DNA polymerase during replication. So this is the effect of ultraviolet light on the DNA. This can be repaired, which we will be discussing in the repair mechanisms. There is a photolyase enzyme responsible for repairing this, and that is induced by light. That will be the point of my next lecture discussion, but here you just focus on the damage. So if you plot a graph of the percentage of surviving organisms against ultraviolet light, you take a culture of bacteria, go on increasing the dose. How to increase the dose? Increase the time. If a cell is exposed for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, as you go on increasing the time, you say you have increased the dose, and the number of surviving organism, you can see as the irradiation time is increased, suddenly there is a dip in the percentage of survival. So this indicates that the DNA is damaged when the cells they cannot multiply or reproduce. So when bacteria they are exposed to ultraviolet radiation, they gradually lose their ability to develop the colonies. This gradual loss in the growth capacity can be expressed graphically, and this graph is called as a survival curve, ultraviolet survival curve. And this dose response graph, this is a dose response graph, means amount of survivors with respect to the dose which is being provided, is called as a survival curve. And this survival curve of bacteria can be used for mathematically calculating the number of spots in the DNA where the hit of radiation took place, the hit of ultraviolet light took place. Therefore, this graph is also called as a hit theory, or the mathematical expression calculations used to find out the number of hits, means how much time is, how much dose is required to kill a certain population of a bacteria, that is called as hit theory. So that is a higher level study. Now, when thymine dimers are there, we see that there is a distortion like this, and the presence, you see the figure, ultraviolet radiation, when it is absorbed by the DNA, adjacent thymine dimers, they result into a mutated DNA. We call it as a distorted DNA or a kink formation, and this is responsible for the cell death, ultimately we can say. Now the question is, why only thymine dimers are there? Why not there can be cytosine, guanine, or any other dimer which are adjacent to each other? This molecular mechanism for this is understood in a very simple way, that if you imagine why the thymine dimers are more in UV mutation, you come to know, the researchers have come to know that purines are generally more radiation resistant than pyrimidines. And in pyrimidine, thymine is more reactive than cytosine. This is one of the major observations by the scientists working on this phenomenon, that purines are generally more radiation resistant. Purines, adenine and guanine, they are more resistant, whereas cytosine and thymine, they are more prone, susceptible to UV radiation, and even in that, thymine is more reactive to the ultraviolet light. Therefore, the ratio of thymine to cytosine is in the decreasing order, that is thymine is 10 is to 3 is to 3. So therefore they are more. Few dimers of thymine uracil and uracil also appear during this uracil, if you say on the DNA, yes, that is what the mutagenic agents are capable of doing, what we have seen in the base analogous compounds. Again, I will explain in the further slides. Uracil molecules are also formed on the DNA due to mutation, and this also results into what you can say a single base change when that is being repaired. The whole problem starts when DNA prepares itself for repair. If it repairs properly in the original type, then there will be no mutation. But if it repairs according to the mutation, then the future generation is affected. So we'll see that. So initial step in pyrimidine dimerization, I will call this as pyrimidine dimerization, is the hydration of the bonds. Hydration of 4:5 bonds takes place, and formation of thymine dimer. It causes distortion of the DNA helix, and the thymine are pulled towards one another. They are pulled back, which creates a kink or the dimer. The distortion results in the weakening of the hydrogen bond. What happens if it is pulled like this? This is AT-AT base pairing. This is T, this is A. 2A, 2T, and suddenly thymine it is pulled. So the hydrogen bond which are there, they are weakened, and hydrogen in the opposite strands, they are almost broken temporarily, and this inhibits the advancement of replication. So this is the action of ultraviolet light on the DNA. The second is X-rays. The X-rays are capable of breaking, these are ionizing radiations, and these are capable of breaking the phosphate diester linkages in the DNA. The phosphodiester linkages. To sugar there is a phosphate bond, and that phosphate bond, if it is broken, a single-stranded nick or a double-stranded nick in the double-stranded DNA, the X-rays, they are capable of causing. So consequently, a large number of bases are deleted or rearranged in the DNA molecule due to X-rays, because this ionizing radiation introduces a nick, cut in the DNA. They may break the DNA in one or both the strands, which I call it as a single-stranded nick in the double-stranded DNA, or a double-stranded nick in the double-stranded DNA. If breaks occur in both strands, then you can imagine it is very lethal. The whole DNA is safe in the cell only because it is covalently closed and circular. The moment it breaks, it is immediately prone or susceptible to the cell's own restriction endonucleases. The cell's restriction endonucleases will immediately cut and break down its own DNA if there are free ends. Remember this point. Therefore, X-rays, they introduce free ends and suddenly it is susceptible to its own enzymatic hydrolysis. The DNA segment between the two breaks uh, can be removed by deletion. Since both the X-rays and UV rays, they bring about the damage in the DNA, they are used in sterilization of bacteria and viruses. X-rays and UV you can see in RO filter, in various areas in hospital operation theaters. UV rays are used for sterilizing the bacteria and their viruses. It is not much effective against viruses, but still the DNA containing viruses, they can be stopped. The second category of induced mutations is chemical mutagenic agents. For this particular slide, it will be in great detail in the further slides, so you can stop and just read the slide. I will not detail about this because all the points are one slide each in the next discussion. But I will just sum it up. Chemical mutagenic agents, they react with the DNA and lead to faulty base pairings or removal of a base, depurination, that is adduct formation, etc. So they really don't damage the DNA physically, like cutting the DNA into single strand or double strand, but they react with the DNA bases and they lead to faulty base pairing by modifying those DNA. Some of the examples of chemical mutagenic agents are 5-bromouracil, that is a base analogous compound, alkylating agents and DNA intercalating agents, ethyl methyl sulfonate. Then DNA intercalation is just getting there, means a dummy type of base is introduced in the DNA, means there is no DNA actually, but a dummy nitrogen base gets incorporated, and that confuses the DNA replication system. We will see, that's very interesting. So we have, those are called as intercalating agents, and alkylating agents which introduce a alkyl group, and suddenly that due to introduction of alkyl group, the base it hydrolyzes off, there is depurination or D base I can say, and it results in a gap in the DNA. So there are certain chemicals like pesticides also. Many pesticides are there which are mutagenic agents. So we'll see some of the mutagenic agents. There are hundreds and thousands of mutagenic agents. We will see some of them pertaining to your syllabus so that you can get a broader idea of all the mutagenic agents in the world today. If you study a few, you should be able to correlate it with the other potent mutagenic agents present in the market or in the environment or on the face of this earth. So the first is a base analogous compound called as 5-bromouracil. So this 5-bromouracil acts by tautomerism. In the types of mutations we have seen the tautomeric effect, and 5-bromouracil is one compound which is capable of introducing tautomeric mutations in the DNA. Now it is a compound, a chemical compound which has two phases. Means in its keto form it resembles thymine, and its enol form it resembles cytosine. Means just one base or one compound on one carbon, when it changes or when there is a isomeric form, enol and keto form, it has two different characters. I can say it has a personality disorder. Okay, the people with personality disorders, they have two faces. They act they're like the Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde is a very famous story. If you read, he was a very noble man in the night, in the day, and in the night he suddenly becomes animal. He becomes a demon. So these are personality disorders. Just like that, 5-bromouracil is a personality disorder, psychopath we can say, which introduces in the mutations in the DNA. So you should refrain from using anthropogenic examples or anthropogenic tone, but still that was just for fun. Point here is 5-bromouracil in its keto form, it resembles thymine, and its keto form, as it resembles thymine, it can base pair with adenine. This is the principle of mechanism of 5-bromouracil. And its enol form, it resembles cytosine. In its enol form, it resembles cytosine, therefore it can pair with guanine. So you see this, these are the two rounds of replication. This is AT base pairing replicating. This is the first generation where one DNA is getting converted into 2 DNA and 2 DNA are getting converted into 4 DNAs. Same with GC, you will understand. So this introduces errors in the replication. What happens is, imagine a 5-bromouracil getting incorporated in a replicating DNA, and in the whole time the cell is replicating, it keeps on changing its enol form and keto form, enol to keto, keto to enol, keto to enol, and vice versa. What will happen in a logarithmic phase of bacterial growth? There are hundreds of rounds of replication, there are many rounds of replication, and these rounds of replication which take place are continuously adding bases. And if there is one base which is changing its nature, means once I will accept T, once I will accept C, I will accept G, I will accept T. So what will happen? You will see here, see, this is a normal AT base pairing, and suddenly when the strands separate, A and T, they separate, or just you can imagine spontaneously. We have seen this spontaneous mutations, we have seen how tautomeric effect takes place, but here this T is getting converted into Bu not spontaneously but due to addition of 5-bromouracil in the medium. If 5-bromouracil is present in the growing medium, then suddenly the T will get converted into 5-bromouracil, and this resembles thymine. In the first round of replication, this is A here, and this which was T, that is A. As this is now in its keto form resembling thymine, it will add G. Okay, AT and TA, it should have been AT and TA, but it becomes AT and GU. Why? Because in the first instance this had acquired a keto form, and keto form is as similar to that of T, therefore keto was there. In the second round of replication, instead of its keto form, it becomes enolic, and in its enolic form it resembles cytosine. So what happens? Instead of adding A here, it adds G. Now this was a normal DNA, AT to AT you will have in the next round of replication, AT forms AT, but here as Bu has suddenly become enolic, it adds GC here, G and C, and B then again go back to its keto, or whether it remains enolic, that depends upon what the next rounds of replication will be. But the whole process has resulted into AT becoming GC, AT base pair becoming GC. The same happens with GC becoming AT also. You can just go through this and see, except that here instead of keto, if it is a enolic form, then GC gets converted into AT here. So these are the two mechanisms of 5-bromouracil, that is, or the 5-bromo induced mutations during replication. 5-bromouracil in its usual keto form, it substitutes for thymine, and a replica of an initial AT base pair becomes ABU base pair. Initially AT base pair becomes ABU base pair, and in the successive rounds of replication, in its rare enolic form, it pairs with G. In the next round of replication, G pairs with C, and this completes the transition. This is a transition type of mutation of AT base pair to GC base pair. So this is the molecular mechanism by which how the 5-bromouracil functions, and a 5-bromouracil is there as long as it is there, changing its tautomeric forms, tautomeric shifts, enol to keto, keto to enol. It will keep on mutating the successive generations to come. So apart from 5-bromouracil, we have three more examples for you to study, that is ethyl methyl sulfonate, nitrous acid, and hydroxylamine. Ethyl methyl sulfonate is an alkylating agent, nitrous acid is a deaminating agent, and hydroxylamine, it acts by hydroxylation. In all these three examples, a GC base pair is converted into AT base pair, the type of mutation which is there. And apart from this, we will be seeing some intercalating agents. So the original base guanine cytosine can be modified to thymine adenine in the presence of these chemical mutagenic agents, three chemical mutagenic agents. So you'll see this one by one. First we'll start with ethyl methyl sulfonate. And so alkylating agents, they are responsible for a process called as alkylation. That is, if you see the original base guanine here, it undergoes a alkylation reaction to give rise to O6 ethyl guanine, and this now has two functions. Either it will be removed away from the point of its position, original position, leading to a depurination reaction, or it can find a point where it can attach with thymine. So that is the second part of the reaction, that it can attach with thymine when there is a modified base. But initially it just depurinates from the site of its reaction, and ultimately during the next rounds of replication, this GC base pair which was there, it gets converted into AT base pair. So addition of an alkyl group to the hydrogen bonding oxygen of guanine, usually in N7 position and in adenine at N3 position. Remember, this is the specificity of this mutagenic agent, that in guanine at the N7 position it adds alkyl group, and in adenine at N3 position it adds the alkyl group, and as a result of this alkylation, the ionization probability increases, and thus the error of pairing also increases. Hydrolysis of the base from the sugar takes place. At the position where the sugar and nitrogen base they are bound, it just removes, nitrogen base is removed from it, and a gap in the chain can be observed. This phenomenon of loss of alkylated base from the DNA molecule by breaking the bond and joining of the nitrogen, breaking of the bond which joins the nitrogen base of a purine and the deoxyribose. The purine and the deoxyribose is called as depurination reaction. We have seen this reaction in our types of mutations. But here one thing I would like to emphasize, that depurination may not always lead to mutation. It is not that dangerous because the cells, they have repair capacity. This repair, DNA damage and repair, is the point of my next lecture discussion. So keep in mind, even if you are greatly emphasizing here on the mutagenic agents, it doesn't mean that mutation will always be lethal. So this is the action of alkylating agents. There are various alkylating agents like ethyl methyl sulfonate, nitrogen mustard, or methyl sulfonate, dimethyl sulfonate, then ethyl ethane sulfonate, EES, EMS, DMS, MMS. Methyl sulfonate is also there. So this specifically reacts by removing guanine and cytosine from the chain. Ethyl methyl sulfonate, if you see, it has two functions. First is it removes the guanine and cytosine from the chain and results in a gap formation. Any base of the four, A, T, G, C, may be added in the gap. So when ethyl methyl sulfonate is added in the media, it removes guanine and cytosine. Instead of that, anything can be added. So if guanine and cytosine are added, then nothing will happen. Means during replication, the gap will be filled by polymerase 1, and if the filling is normal as that of the wild type DNA, there is no mutation. But if it is an incorrect base, if there is insertion of an incorrect base, then it results in transversion reaction or transition reaction. That is a transition and transversion. Purines replaced by pyrimidines, or pyrimidines replaced by pyrimidines themselves, whatever. We have seen the transition and transversion type of mutation that may occur here if a wrongly incorporated base is the result of the next round replication. Similarly, there is another example called as methyl nitrosoguanidine, which adds methyl group to the guanine. Methyl nitrosoguanidine, which adds a methyl group to the guanine and causing it to mispair with thymine, like this. See here, this is methyl guanine, addition of methyl group to guanine by nitrosoguanidine treatment, and this, what happens, you can see the wild type DNA here, AGT. This G is incorporated, is converted to methyl guanine. In the next round of replication, as this methyl guanine now pairs with T, in the second round of replication, this original GC gets converted into AT base pairing. So guanine is converted to methylguanine, and this is now pairs with thymine, and thymine, which was formerly pairing with what you can say, this has a resemblance, and G and T, the pair, it gets converted in the next round of replication to GT and AT. So this G still remains there, and in every round of replication it will go on making GT to AT base pairing. So this is the nitroso-guanidine reaction, which is also a alkylating agent. The next chemical which is responsible for introducing deamination is nitrous acid. Nitrous acid is a chemical which removes the amine group from cytosine and converts it into uracil. So cytosine is converted to uracil by the nitrous acid reaction. In addition, this we have seen in spontaneous mutations. This can happen spontaneously, but without nitrous acid also deamination reactions can take place spontaneously. But if nitrous acid is added in the reaction or in the growing cells, this acts as a potent compound which can forcibly remove the amine group from cytosines, converting them into uracil, and therefore in the next round of replication this uracil will pair with adenine, and this adenine will get converted into a AT base pairing. So original GC gets converted into AT base. So here GC to AT, this transition type of mutation results with nitrous acid. Nitrous acid has three different transitions. If you see guanine, it acts on guanine, cytosine and adenine. It has the capacity to act on guanine, cytosine and adenine. When it acts on guanine, it modifies the base into xanthine. Guanine in the presence of nitrous acid is modified to xanthine, and this xanthine now has the capacity to base pair with cytosine. Okay, so this, but here what is happening? Guanine is pairing with cytosine, so GC base pairing is remaining GC. This xanthine will resemble guanine, no? So there is no problem. There is no transition effect here. But if it is acting on cytosine, nitrous acid acting on cytosine, then it converts this cytosine to uracil, and uracil it pairs with adenine, and CG or GC to AT base pairing transition takes place. Similarly, nitrous acid has the capacity to act on adenine because these have the amine groups, and it deaminates it. All are deamination reaction and all result into transition mutation. So adenine is deaminated to form hypoxanthine. This hypoxanthine resembles guanine, and this pairs with cytosine. So again AT base pairing is converted to GC. So nitrous acid is capable of converting CG to AT and AT to GC both. So it is a very potent mutagenic agent capable of two-way transitions in the growing cells. The next chemical compound which is a potent mutagenic agent is hydroxylamine. Hydroxylamines, they are very specific base modifying chemicals which add a hydroxyl group to cytosine. You see, in the presence of hydroxylamine, this cytosine, this amine group, there is a hydroxyl group added, and this gets converted into hydroxyl amine cytosine. Hydroxyl amine cytosine has the capacity to pair with adenine. So CG base pairing gets converted into TA base pairing. This conversion increases the frequency of a rare tautomer. The tautomer pairs with adenine instead of guanine. As you can see, adenine instead of guanine, and this leads to a GC to AT base pairing. As hydroxyl amines, they react exclusively only on cytosines. Hydroxyl amines, they react only on cytosines. They will not generate AT to GC base pairing. Remember, this is a very good point to be noted. As we saw in the case of nitrous acid, it is capable of converting AT to GC, GC to AT both, but hydroxyl amines, they act only on cytosine. Therefore, there will be no TA to GC transitions. So intercalating agents is the last, or the, you can say, next type of chemical compounds which are capable of introducing mutations. There are certain dyes such as acridine orange, proflavin, acriflavin. These are three-ringed compounds. As you can see, these are originally already three-ringed compounds. So what happens is that when the DNA replicates, if they are present in the media, irrelevant of whether they are needed or not, they will substitute inside. Means if you have a blank bench to sit on, three students will come and sit there, whether they are needed or not. They will just come and occupy the space. A space is occupied by this three ring compound. These acridins, they are flat, they are planar, which can be intercalated. Intercalation means they just enter in the space which is available, and they distort the DNA, and this results in a deletion or insertion of deletion or insertion type of mutation during the DNA replication. Due to deletion or why there will be deletion, the repair mechanism or the editing function will remove it. And you know very well that editing function or the repair mechanism doesn't remove only one base. It removes along with it few bases, some 2 to 10 bases, and this may result into a frame shift mutation due to addition and deletion type of mutation. You can see here this is a three ring compound. As the DNA, it is replicating from the 5' to 3', new strand is formed. Suddenly it intercalates between two adjacent nitrogen bases on the same strand. It gets added, but what happens is this is recognized as wrong, it is removed, there leaves a gap, and this gap is filled. The gap is there means it is a situation similar to depurination reaction, so it has to be filled with something. So there is filling by, usually adenines are added. So this adenine is added, and you can see GAA, and there was GAAC. Only two A were there, but it becomes GAAC. Means there are additional insertion of a base on the DNA takes place. In a strand which contains thousands of DNA molecule, one base addition may be very non-significant for the space or the length of the DNA. Somebody may ask, doesn't this increase the length of the DNA? No, it is very insignificant. But the effect which it has on the mRNA and the protein is very great. We have seen 9 possible changes are there in the reading codon. Okay, so they distort the three-dimensional structure of the DNA, causing single nucleotide insertion and deletions. These insertions and deletions, they frequently keep on producing frame shift mutations, and intercalating agents, they are responsible for frame shift type of mutations. Okay, and as they are you can say intercalating between, sandwiching between bases, they can also reverse the effect. We will see that in repair. So finally we have seen certain chemicals which are in the types of mutation. We have seen certain chemicals which are capable of giving rise to oxidative reactions. Reactive forms of oxygen, they damage the DNA, they induce mutations by bringing about chemical changes to the DNA. Then these example, in this you can see guanine, in the presence of oxidative radical, it gets converted into 8-oxy 7,8 dihydro deoxyguanine. 8-oxy 7,8 dihydroxy deoxyguanine, which mispairs with adenine. So a GC base pairing is getting converted into AT base pairing. Some of the reactive forms of oxygen in a chemical reaction, they may form the superoxide radicals, hydrogen radicals, hydroxyl radicals. They are produced in the aerobic environment. They are produced in the course of normal aerobic metabolism, and as well as they are also produced by radiations. So ozones, peroxides, and certain drugs, and this can have a deleterious effect or a marked effect on the phenotype and the genotype of a cell. So we come to the end of this discussion. You have to remember and recall the induced mutations. They can be induced by physical, chemical, and biological mutagenic agents. In this discussion today, we saw physical mutagenic agents in the form of radiations, UV. You should remember UV survival curve and hit theory. You should remember the action of X-rays on DNA, how they give rise to lesions. It's called as lesion, Leision. Lesions means cuts, single stranded cuts or double stranded cuts. Chemical mutagenic agents, we saw base analogous compounds in the form of 5-bromouracil. We saw alkylating agents in the form of ethyl methyl sulfonate or methyl methyl sulfonate or ethyl ethyl sulfonate. We saw nitrous acid and its depurination reaction capacities. We saw hydroxyl amine and its potent mutagenic capacity of converting GC base pair into AT base pair, whereas nitrous acid AT to GC and GC to AT, both intercalating agents which are dummy three ringed structures. These are dyes, these are color compounds. You see, this is the action of dyes when it happens on our body. When you eat foods with dyes, added dyes, and if they are not food grade, of course, nobody can guarantee that there is a food grade color added in your junk food. And this acts as intercalating agents in your DNA and body, and they give rise to mutations and the oxidative reactions which we just saw. Now, having said this, having discussing mutagenic effects right from two lectures, I would like to say that the cell has a capacity to repair. That will be the point of my next discussion. That is, there are enzymes which have the capacity to repair the damage in the DNA. It's a beautiful, interesting mechanism. Whenever there is a damage, the cell doesn't accept this damage so easily and die off. It fights to a great extent and tries to survive. It gives you a motivation that there is no thing called as suicidal tendency in a cell. There is no cellular death as it is. The cell tries to live as long as it can. Even with the impaired system, it tries to live. It doesn't bother. It is called as the SOS type of repair. Okay, so all these types of repair we will be seeing in the next lecture. So I hope you understood what the point is there with mutations. I hope you get a window to higher knowledge, higher domain of knowledge for your next degree course whenever you will be studying, and maybe a great opportunity to venture into research. So for that, I hope you study well. Try to listen it once again, try to discuss the points with me which you don't understand, and make the things, concepts clearer, as crystal clear as possible. All the best for that.